and you're just throwing so much research, and then you get that habit of doing all this research, and you lose your voice as a writer. I felt so that's why, when I read that, and I was like, man, it was like he hit the hammer on the head, or the nail on the head, or whatever. It was just like it just clicked.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, and I want to ask everybody else, like, do you guys relate to that? And you could type it in the chat, yes, you do, or you could jump in and share an experience too. Okay, so a lot of people saying yes, that you relate to that. Yeah, it really is unfortunate. Because there's a moment in time in our early school days where it's really valuable to learn how to research and how to prove that you've learned something by writing about research. But then there's this transition when like you need to be able to not only show that you've done the research, but more importantly, say what you learned as your unique individual self. And we don't get rewarded for that, because I think there's a lot of bad teachers out there who only reward research and facts instead of opinions and ideas. But that's not realistic, you guys. Like, in the big picture of academia and going forward, like in your classes, and especially if you move forward into graduate school, and even out there, like in the real world, your ideas are the things that earn you credit and that impress people, not regurgitating other people's ideas. So really excellent. Thank you for making that point, Edra.
Thank you.
Does anybody else want to jump in and share anything about the reading? Again, before I go through some of the other discussion posts that I picked out.
It's Aaliyah again. So what I wrote in my discussion for They Say I Say, I said that I learned 2 ideas, which is blending the author's word with my own words, and then 3 ways of responding.
Okay.
So then where is it? My bad.
That's okay.
Okay, so I said for the first one, like using the author's word with my words, I said that to me this means that it's important to have your own ideas, but also have evidence that are called citations. And like I used to struggle with that in a way. Like I'll use my own words, and then I would get a bad grade because I didn't have any evidence. I just said what I thought that I knew in a way.
Good. And
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Can you tell me, is this Aliyah with an A or Kalia with a K?
Aaliyah with an A.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I think I might have picked a part of your post out as well, so I just wanted to double check. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. And then I also picked in the 3 ways to respond, the 3-way responding. It says these 3 categories will force you to oversimplify your argument or lessen its complexity, stability, I think that's what it says, and originality on page 54.
Okay.
So basically, when I read that, it made me think I shouldn't be complicated when I'm writing. Like I shouldn't think about, oh, this should impress the teacher that I'm using like these big words. But then like I'm so focused on trying to impress the teacher, I should really like make the assignment simple for myself.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too. I think we lose track of this concept. Like, ideas can be complex, but the way that we state them can and should be simple. Because if you want someone to understand a complex idea, the best way to say it is to say it in a straightforward, easy to understand way. But we get caught up in the words and wanting to make it seem complex, like you said, to impress the reader. But really all that does is confuse the reader because they can't understand your great idea. So yeah, that's a really great point. Okay, I'm gonna rewind back here really quickly and go through these other discussion posts that I had picked out. So, okay, so this one is actually from Kalia with a K. And Kalia wrote, I can use evidence that contradicts my argument to support what I am saying. which is something that I've never thought about. And doing this can make any of my arguments stronger. And I really like this because this statement itself seems contradictory, right? If we bring in evidence that opposes our own argument, we think that that's going to hurt our argument, or at least that's our instinct. But the truth is, by pulling in concepts and ideas that don't agree with what you're saying, it gives you a chance to refute them and explain why those ideas don't make any sense, or why your idea is better than the idea you don't agree with. So the reason why pulling in those contradictory arguments support what you're saying is because it shows your thoroughness. It shows that you've truly looked at all sides and all pieces of the puzzle, and you're not just going on and on about what you believe. Kalia, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. Okay, so when I was writing it down as I was reading, it was something that was said inside of that section. It was like about, I think, gun control or gun laws or something like that. Basically, they had put evidence saying that they should take guns off the street because it's, it makes the criminal rate goes up, something like that. And then that's when she said that we should have guns for protection. That's what her words were. Basically, it contradicted what her argument, but it actually made her argument more stronger. So yeah, that's why I put what I put.
Yeah, so that example in the text about gun control, it really does a good job of kind of demonstrating how that works. So awesome. Thank you, Kalia. All right, so my next discussion post comment that I picked is from Amy, and Amy wrote, another idea that I have learned from the reading is to agree, but with a difference. So if a writer agrees and you also agree, mention some new ways that the author did not mention as to why you also agree. This can be new information to readers, and it also expands the principle of why to agree or not, or to disagree, I should say. So this one is important too. It kind of speaks to the concept of unpacking. So, and I ask usually on the discussion board, like when you are required to respond to a peer, what I really hope to see is more than I agree. That makes perfect sense. Like, really good answer, good job. Because as you know, when you see that stuff on the discussion board, it doesn't add anything. It's not furthering the conversation. It's not making anyone think. It's just a basic compliment. So agreeing with the difference kind of unpacks your statement that you agree, and both explains why you agree and points out maybe any little areas that you don't agree with. So you don't have to always agree 100%. You can agree with 60%, let's say, and then point out what you don't agree with and explain why. So it's kind of that middle ground. Amy, do you want to add anything to your post here? And Amy wrote on the chat board, maybe to be more descriptive in agreeing and disagreeing. Yeah, yep. And not dull. That's exactly it. Agreeing and disagreeing are a necessary part of a conversation. You can't get away from those concepts, but being more descriptive, unpacking the ideas, and adding more detail, definitely. Thank you, Amy. All right, I'm going to move into this next one. So this one's from April, and April wrote, these two kind of connect. So using a mixed feelings move is perfectly acceptable. Sometimes I tend to overthink my writing and think I'm just going to bore my readers if it takes me more than just a couple of sentences to get my point across. So when I don't, I feel like I'm selling myself short. And this is this end part that's so important. Chapter 3 helped me realize that I'd rather not be someone's cup of tea than allow them to form an opinion without giving it all I've got. So I really like that, because you're talking about a couple of different things there. One being the need to hurry up and rush your idea because you don't want to feel like you're just going on and on rather than getting to your point. And we've talked a lot about being concise and getting to your point. And there's this fine line that you have to walk where you really have to balance between not going on and on and on and on and on and on versus going on just to that right just in that right amount, just to the point where you've fully unpacked your idea, made your idea really clear and illustrated for your reader, and then moved on. So you have to find the sweet spot. And I just really like this ending part, April, where you said you'd rather that someone like didn't like what you wrote than allow them to maybe form a incorrect opinion because you didn't write enough. So do you want to add anything to that, April?
I just want to say that it's ironic because I almost like kind of felt that while I was like writing my like discussion. But I don't know, like the last sentence says, I'd rather say what I'm actually thinking, and then you can you know just form your opinion based on that rather than like not say it. So I'm so glad that you liked that last part, because that was the part where I felt like, am I doing too much? But even if I am doing too much, okay, well, that's how I felt, so I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting that you said that you almost felt like writing this post that maybe you were taking too long to get your point across, but I don't think that you did. I think like in your post, you actually said just the right amount of information to not only make your point, but drive it home in a way that stood out in my mind. Like it caught my attention, and that's the goal, right? Like make your point, drive it home, and help people and make it still important that people remember it. So yeah, I did a good job.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, and then moving on, I just have two more because we talked about address here. So this next one is from Julia, and Julia wrote, one of the first quotes that stood out to me was at the beginning of the reading, and that was, quotations are orphans, words that have been taken from their original context and that need to be integrated into their new textual surroundings. And this is an important concept for our class going forward, as well as in any paper that you ever write that requires research. You cannot just drop in quotations and expect them to fit in and expect your reader to understand why you've dropped it in. Because as the quote says, they're like orphans. You've taken them out of their original home and you've got to help them feel comfortable within your home, your paper. So I thought I picked this one just because it's such an important concept that I would say I see a lot of mistakes on. I see a lot of students just dropping quotes in without introducing them and then without following them up with an explanation, which is kind of against the rules in academic writing. So Julia, do you want to add anything?
I kind of like felt that it kind of gave me a new visual on like what quotations actually are, because I never really thought too much in detail. Like I would just throw a quote in there and not really like understand like why I would have to do it, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So, like yeah, it gave me a new meaning pretty much.
Awesome. You know, you said like you just threw a quote in there without really understanding why. And that is so common. I have very clear memories of doing that myself when I first started college. Like, okay, I have to have a source or two. So find a source, drop in a quote, meet the requirement, I got an A. So it really, quoting and research all just seemed pointless to me. It was just what the teacher wanted. So I did it, and I didn't really understand how to do it well or even what the purpose of it was, which is why I get real excited, I guess, to teach about this writing as a conversation and, you know, making your writing important by pulling in other people's writing, because that's really the only way that it's alive, is if it's interacting with other people's ideas. So thank you for that, Julia. And very last one, and this one's from Ashanti. And she wrote, by bringing new ideas to the argument, it can lead you to point out unnoticed evidence or information that the person you are agreeing with hasn't noticed. This would help me become a valuable participant in an argument and therefore would give my words and opinions credibility in the argument. So another really important concept from the reading is that when you pull in new ideas and other people's ideas, it kind of provides like a platform where you can start with somebody else's idea, but then point out something that that person did not notice or wasn't able to effectively point out. So you can use it as a springboard or a platform, I guess you could say again, and a building block for your own ideas. And that's just another really effective way to use other people's writing. Ashanti, do you want to add anything to that?
I would say that it's always a good idea to add your own opinions into something, because when you add your own opinion, it's like you making a connection with whatever you're writing about, and it just really helps like to make it feel like it's like your own, but like at the same time use somebody else's ideas. It can help to better your argument.
Yep, and that's exactly it, is that when our arguments are stronger when they're surrounded by other people's ideas, whether those ideas agree or disagree with ours, putting it in the context of the bigger conversation, it strengthens things. And it kind of that concept goes back to what Edra said too, about not wanting to overquote, like, because your ideas, you want to stay true to your ideas, it's your paper. But at the same time, you've got to figure out how to integrate the bigger picture in order to make your ideas matter. So awesome. Thank you, Ashanti. All right. So a final little slide here about quoting, right? Because that's really what the They Say, I Say reading was about this time around. And by the way, a lot of people too on the discussion board talked about how important these templates are becoming to you guys, and how useful you're saying that they can be. So that makes me really happy. I'm glad that so many people are seeing the value in them, and I'm excited. I'm hoping to see them in your work going forward, that you're pulling in the templates as they are, or that you're modifying them and working with them. So a couple of highlights, I guess. Make sure that you're quoting responsibly. And we talked about that in a previous meeting, that you are not changing the meaning of a quote to make it sound better or worse maybe than it really is. Make sure that you are breaking up longer quotes. So the rule of thumb, well, I don't know if there is a rule of thumb, but my guidance to you would be that in a paper that's under 10 pages, so anything from 1 to 10, you don't want to have a quote that is longer than 3 lines on the screen. So not 3 sentences, but 3 physical lines if you were to count them on the screen. If it's any longer than that, you're kind of going down that path of relying way too much on what somebody else has said. And it's not that, if you, let's say you find a quote and it does take up 3 lines and it's important and you need to bring it into your paper, like it's one of those platforms and it really needs to be part of the conversation, you can use it. You can use the whole thing, but you have to break it up. So you find a place where you can split that quote into, say, 2 or 3 separate quotes, and you interrupt it with your own ideas. And in that way, you're interacting with what the other person said. You're not just slapping it onto the page and saying, oh, here, read this really long thing someone else said. You're breaking it down, you're taking your time with it, and you're making it work for you, as opposed to just presenting somebody else's idea. The 80-20 rule is a rule of thumb, and that's for any paper that you write. 80% of it should be your writing, your words, your ideas, and your thoughts. 20% can be quoting or paraphrasing and other people's thoughts and ideas. But a good way to think about that is just literally in terms of word count. So if you're turning something in and it's 1,000 words long, 800 of those words should be yours, and only 200 of them should be quotes and paraphrasing. There's an easy way, I guess easy being a relative term, it takes a little bit of time, but if you bold every quotation or paraphrase that you put into a paper when you're working on it, then you can go back when you're done. And if you use Microsoft Word, you can highlight everything that you bolded and put together how many words total you have quoted or paraphrased. And then you just figure out if that's 20% or not. If you have a 1,000-page paper, again, that's easy, 200 words or less. If you are approaching like a 50-50 mark, you are way over quoting and paraphrasing. You want to be as close to that 80-20, 75-25 as okay as possible. So any questions about these concepts? Okay. All right, I'm gonna move into this next screen, which is just an example of what, I guess, remind me guys, did They Say, I Say reading, did they call it a quote sandwich when they talked about introducing the quote and explaining it?
Yeah.
They did. Okay. That's a pretty common phrase. That's why I couldn't remember if they actually used it or not, because most English textbooks do talk about the quote sandwich. So you guys already know the idea is you've got, a top bun and a bottom bun, which is the introducing the quote and then explaining the quote, and then the meat of the sandwich, of course, is the quote itself. So I just want to show you guys an example, and how this could play out is really an entire paragraph that is a quote sandwich. So this first part here is going to be the introduction to the quote. And it says, when the focus is grading, we lose sight of the student as a developing writer and instead see only writing that must be ranked. When we tell students what is wrong with their writing, instead of asking questions and trying to help students make meaning of their text, there is little room for students to grow. In her honest and enlightening article, I Don't Grade Papers Anymore, Marilyn E. Calabrese discusses the benefits she has realized by moving away from grade-based assessment. So all of this is the introduction to the quote. And it starts with my own thoughts and ideas, right? So this is my own paragraph from one of my essays. I'm giving some information about how I feel as a teacher, right? When we focus on grading, then we're not really helping students and we're just trying to, rank their work instead of helping them grow. That's my introduction into the topic and into the quote. And then I'm using these descriptive words, her honest and enlightening article. I'm including the name of the article and the name of the writer to give her credit. And then I give this one-line summary of what the article is about. And now comes my quote. She has learned through experience that for teachers, grades get in the way of other kinds of responses. So my quote's just a little, maybe 10% of my entire paragraph. And then I follow it up with the bottom bun, which is my own explanation. By indicating quality via a letter grade, we are communicating to students that we care far more about how closely their work conforms to our expectations than about what they have actually said. So a pretty decent sized paragraph that is mostly my writing, with just a little bit of a quote that I use to build my own argument with. And this example is kind of what you're really shooting for when you're working with other people's ideas and quotes. Any questions or comments about this? Okay. Let me click. All right, so we're going to switch gears a little bit, kind of coming away from the concept of quoting and working with other writers and authors' ideas and go into a little bit more of the technical side of things for the summary response essay that's coming up here. All of our work in this class should conform to MLA style formatting and citation rules. A lot of classes use APA, but we use MLA because this this class falls into the social sciences or the arts. So we're allowed to use MLA, which is way better. So that's what we use. There's 3 components that are important. Your overall paper formatting, which is the easy stuff. And then of course your in-text citations and works cited, which tend to scare people. So I'm going to try to simplify it for you here. But first, quickly down on the bottom right, we have our participation question that just popped in. Just a quick yes or no. Are you familiar with MLA style quoting and citing and works cited page? Okay, so a really split class here with the yeses and the nos. Okay, that is often the case actually. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into what I said. Like I said, I hope that I can simplify things a little bit for you and make it less scary for those of you not familiar with it. The formatting, really simple. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't care about like this stuff, like your name and then, the teacher name and your course name and up here, your page header. You're not going to lose points in my class because you didn't do that right. That being said, there are teachers who will dock you a lot of points for not formatting things correctly. So it's a good idea to just be in the habit of following this: your name, teacher name, course name, due date, and then last name and page number up here on the right. It's a good habit to get into. If you, like I said, if you don't do all of this, I'm not going to dock you points. But if you do it and you do it wrong, then I will go ahead and tell you what you did wrong so that you can brush up on the formatting for other classes. Same thing here, title of your paper. Title of your paper should be, before the first paragraph, it should be centered. It should be in title case, which means you capitalize all the words except for like your little words of, the, and, is, and things like that. And then of course you should indent your paragraphs. I do care about that because it's very hard to read a paper that doesn't have indented paragraphs because I don't know where the new paragraphs start. So please do indent your paragraphs, and double spaced. Really the only reason that that's important, well, because it's part of MLA formatting, and it makes it a lot easier to read for anybody who's trying to grade it or just read it and understand what you're writing. So again, the easy stuff is the paper formatting. This is what it should look like if you are following the directions correctly. Also, I suppose important, especially for those teachers who are really picky and like to take off points for everything they can, 1-inch margins around the paper. That's what Microsoft Word is set to as a default. So unless you are not working in Microsoft Word or you have your default changed, you don't have to worry about that. And you should use 12-point font. And that's, a lot of teachers will really dock you points for changing your font if you try to make it bigger to meet a page count. And because we look at papers all day, every day, we can tell when it's 12.5 or 13, or even worse, 14. So just leave it set at 12. That's always your best bet. And we talked about the rest of it. Okay. So now on to the more complicated stuff, citing and works cited pages. Here's why you need to do it. This isn't just something that is silly or stupid or teachers like to make students do for, just to be mean. It's actually really important. A citing system, whether it's MLA or APA or Chicago style, there's a whole bunch of them. It allows us to give credit where credit's due, right? So when we are taking other people's ideas, like we've been talking about all meeting, and integrating them into our own work, we have to give credit to the people who had those ideas, just as you would want someone to give you credit for your ideas. It's just hugely important. It also means that, or it's also a way for a reader of a paper to access the original text that you are quoting or that you are taking ideas from. Because sometimes when you're reading something and you come across a quote, like let's zoom back really quickly right here. Let's say you were reading this paper and this part here. In her honest and enlightening article, I don't grade papers anymore. You're like, oh, I don't grade papers anymore. Like, how could a teacher not grade papers? That sounds really interesting. I want to read this article by this Maryland person. I want to know more about I don't grade papers anymore. Well, if I want to find that information, A, it's got to be here clearly in the in-text citation. And then B, I've got to be able to go into the works cited page and find a link to the article or figure out where it was published so that I can read more about it. Believe it or not, in academia, it happens a lot where we're reading something and it quotes something that sparks our interest and we want to read more about it. So that is the main reason why citing is so important. It also builds your own credibility. So when you are pulling in credible authors and you're agreeing with them or disagreeing with them, it shows that you have looked at the big picture, and it shows that you understand how important it is to see the big picture and work with other people's ideas rather than just go on and on about your own without entering the conversation. So to reiterate, citing within the text, in-text citations, tells the readers where the ideas come from as they're actually reading the paper. And then the reference list or the works cited page, it provides readers the full information on those sources so that they can go to them if they want to. I like to think about in-text citations and the reference list as keys and doors. So the key is the in-text citation. And here's just a quick sentence. The captivating article about managing a household with a dog, 2 cats, 1 gerbil, and 2 unruly boys provides solutions to finding peace and quiet. Then I have this in-text citation, right? I have my direct quote because I can see the quotation marks. And my in-text citation tells me the last name of the author. So if I'm reading this and I'm like, oh, I want to find solutions to peace and quiet, I need to know more about what this McPherson said. Then I can go to the door. I have my key. My key is the last name McPherson. I can go to the reference page, which is the door. It's locked, but I have the key. Again, I have this last name. I can scan down the reference list, which is in alphabetical order, easily locate the last name, and I can figure out where the article was published, and ideally even have a link that takes me directly to the original piece. So this is the idea. The in-text citations are like the keys, and then the reference list is just a long list of doors that you can unlock when you find the key within the text. Questions about the concept or the purpose or why this is important? Okay. Guys, give me one quick second. There's just a knock at my door and I don't want to turn into the dog going crazy. So give me one quick second. I will be right back. Okay, thank you so much. I'm sorry about that. It was Girl Scout cookies, so I'm glad I answered. That is always good when the Girl Scout cookies are delivered. All right, so moving right along, a little bit more information about the MLA in-text citations and how to do them. They're not that complicated, especially in MLA. They're easier in MLA than APA. So we call these in-text citations also parenthetical citations because they're inside of parentheses. And all you need to include is the last name and a page number if there is one. Since most of the time we're working with online sources, there aren't page numbers anymore. So 90% of the time, I would say it's just a last name. In APA, you put the date after the last name, but we don't do that in MLA. So for most of you, most of the time, when you're including the parenthetical citation, it's just going to be the last name of the author, and that's it. Very, very simple. No date, APA, I already said that. This is one where I see a lot of mistakes. You do not need a parenthetical citation at the end of your sentence if the author's name is already stated in the sentence. And here's an example. We're just going to look at the second sentence here. It says, according to William Ermshire, comments on an ungraded paper can tactfully indicate degrees of improvement that grades cannot register. And then there's the page number. So because the beginning of the sentence says, according to this author, right? We've got the author's name right here in the sentence. We've got a quote, so we know it's a direct quote. There's no question who said this direct quote. We can tell right here in the sentence, easy peasy. That means that in the parenthetical citation, we do not need the last name. If this had not come out of a book with page numbers, then there would not be a parenthetical citation at all. It's only because it came out of an actual physical book with a page number that this number is here. And you'll see too that there is no P or PG or P period or anything. If you are including a page number, you don't use an abbreviation for page. Questions about this? If you are working with an article that does not have an author's name, which isn't a great idea. I'll be honest. If there's not an author name, that kind of takes away from the credibility. We talked about how the author is really the most important indicator of credibility. But let's just say you've got an article from the CDC or some other very reliable source that kind of the entity itself is the author. Then you would use the first couple of words of the article's title or of the web page's title in place of the last name. So if your article or the web page from the CDC is titled Vaccines, Why You Need Them, then your parenthetical citation, like over here, instead of the last name, could be vaccines. It could be just vaccines, anywhere from 1 to 3 words to distinguish or to let your reader know what corresponding entry on the reference page they want to find. So if you've got a couple of articles that start with the word vaccines, you'd want to include, the first couple of words so that it's possible to tell which one you're referencing. If you have a question about how to properly do an in-text citation, just email me. Email me your paragraph as well as the link to the source, and I'll tell you how to do it. This is the information that you should gather in order to be able to do your in-text citations correctly, as well as your works cited page. And I'm going to go through how to do the works cited page in a different meeting because that takes a little bit longer. And I think that probably we've talked about enough. It's enough to do just the in-text citations in one meeting, but you do need all of this information in order to properly get everything cited. So the author's first and last name, the full date of publication, that includes the month and the day and the year, the title of the article, and the publishing entity or website, like if that's Forbes.com or the New York Times.com or the CDC, American Psychological Association, whatever it might be. You want to note that down. And then the URL, because we do include the links in our work since almost everything is done online. As long as you gather all that information about every article that you're going to use, you're going to be able to correctly do an in-text citation and correctly do your works cited page. And the date of access. Sorry, that last one popped in at the bottom. So the date that you access the material is also important. There is a good way to stay organized as you're starting to do this research. So since you're working on your summary response paper, and it's the first time that I'm asking you to, find and write and talk about credible sources related to your topic. And in the end, you're going to be able to use these sources in your final paper. So you don't want to lose track of them. I recommend that you use what's called a DURL, which is a double entry research log. And you'll see in this week's module, I included a Word document that has this exact setup down here for you to work with. I don't require this, it's not graded, but I do strongly recommend that you use it as a tool to keep track of your sources. You're just going to have 2 as you work on the summary response paper, but then we have a different paper where you have to have 3 sources. So then you've built up to 5, and it's really to your benefit to keep track of them all in one place. And then you can use this very last box over here. It says URL. You can use that to copy paste the URL for the article. And if you want, what I do is I actually type out this little list of information right here. I type all that out in the URL box so that I have it handy and I know that I've got everything I need.
I have a question about that particular paper that you're talking about.
Sure.
I actually found it in the module a couple of days ago, but it's no way that you can go in and edit that paper.
Did I do a PDF maybe?
No, it was just that I wasn't able to go in and edit it because it says once you get done with it, you can delete it. But I clicked on it and I was unable to type anything or edit.
Well, you'll have to download it. So when you click, I guess I'm doing things without talking. So the DURL document is here in the week 5 module, right underneath the week 5 readings.
Okay.
And then you'll click and it'll appear here and you won't be able to do anything. But
okay.
if you go, I think right here. So at the top left-hand corner, if you go to download, it will download the document and then you should be able to, to pull it up, and then you can enable editing, and that's when you can get rid of.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. If you're not working with Microsoft Word, then you can simply, you should be able to copy. Like you should, I hope. No, it might not let you copy. Well, good news is if you don't have Microsoft Word, you're using Google Docs or you're using Pages, this is very simple, right? It's just these 4 headings, and in a Google Doc, you can insert a table, or you could even use like an Excel program or a spreadsheet program. Really simple to recreate this. So if you are having troubles and you want this form and you can't seem to use it, just let me know and I'll try to figure out a way to get it to you or help you create it in whatever you're using. Okay, so I'm going to jump back here. I know that in this sample right here, it says it's worth 10% of your grade, but it's not. And in the one that's located in our week 5 module, that's removed. It doesn't say that. You are not required to submit it. It is not worth part of your grade. It's just a tool that I recommend for you. Okay, so rounding things up right before we get to our Zoom writing credit for the meeting. So this Thursday's meeting, as usual now, is optional, and I actually don't have any pre-planned content like I have for the last couple. So you can come and show up to the meeting if you want to ask me questions about anything at all, you know, concerning your summary response
I have
paper.
a question.
Yeah.
For Thursday's meeting, can you schedule how to do MLA? Because I don't know how to do it.
You mean beyond what we talked about today?
Yeah, like I just like I meant plus like format. I don't know how, like I don't know what, like I don't understand it well.
Yes, so definitely, yes, I will plan to talk about MLA, but what I'll ask is that, and who am I talking to? Sorry.
It's May.
Okay,
MEI.
May. If what would work really well is if you come at the beginning of the meeting, and then I will go ahead and like work one-on-one with you to answer any specific questions, and like we can share screens back and forth or pull up a document and I can show examples. But I think that it's more beneficial to do it that way than it is for me to just like prepare a PowerPoint on it. Because I could talk about MLA for like an hour and I'm still not sure how much you would learn from it. It probably would be better for you to be able to ask your questions and have me answer them. I think you'll learn more, and so would anybody else who comes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's actually the MLA format is in Google Docs because we used it when I was going to school last year.
You mean just the setup of the paper, or you mean like the references?
The setup of the paper is in Google Docs.
And if I go into Google Docs, can you share a little bit more about what you mean by that? Like that it's in Google Docs?
As far as like with the header and everything, how you showed us, it should be a setup on Google Docs with it on there.
And is there a way, so if I just added like a blank document?
No, it should be at the top where you was just at.
Oh, go back. Okay.
Yes, go back. Up in this area here where the templates and all this stuff is, you should be able to find it in that area somewhere.
I wonder if I search MLA. No, MLA formatted. I'm not familiar with what you're suggesting, so I would love to know more about it because it sounds like it's helpful. If you have the time to look more.
Yeah, you will have to probably look through the different ones, but I know it should be a format somewhere there.
Okay. Well, if anybody else knows more about that, because it doesn't come up in a search and I'm not seeing it necessarily here. Oh, there's essay.
There it is at the bottom.
Yep, I do. Okay, so it's under the education heading. And it looks like if we pull up report under MLA. Yeah, there you go. That is a really great tool. So it's got exactly how you need to have things formatted. You've even got your page number already inserted over here, your title centered. Yep. And then, you know, headers are not really something we use in our class, but some classes do. Awesome, thank you. Who's sharing this tip with me?
Kim,
Kim, thank you very much. Yeah,
you're welcome.
that's awesome. So this makes formatting easy. You don't really have to even work at it to get the formatting down. Okay, so let me jump back over here real quick. Okay, so this is where we were. So now there is a little bit of pre-planned content. I'm gonna definitely talk about MLA. Anybody feel free to come in and I will answer your questions. If you have already started working on your summary response report, that's a really great time that you could share your screen with me and I'll give you feedback about the MLA formatting or quoting or anything else that you've done. There's a change of due date that works in your guys' favor, actually, because it seems like about 99% certain that I'm gonna have my baby this weekend. So I wanted to not be grading in the hospital while I'm having a baby. So I decided to kind of push things out a week, which means that you guys are gonna have it a little bit easy next week. And I'm gonna show you in the modules real quick in just a second. So your new due date for the summary response essay is 2/26. So it's extended by a full week. Next week, week 6, there will be no meetings on Tuesday or Thursday. So it's a slower week. Work on your essay. You've got plenty of time. There's one short reading that I assigned and one discussion question for you to answer next week as well. And then the upcoming weeks, like I said, I want to just give you guys a visual preview of that so you see what the plan is. Okay, so you see week 6 right here, is really short, really simple. It's our easiest week. I'm gonna go ahead and publish that for you guys now so that you have access to it. If you look at the Zoom meeting schedule and link, you will see that week 5, so this is where we're at now, week 5, and then Thursday is optional. Next week, no Zoom meetings, no Zoom credit assignments at all. And then week 7 and week 8 on Tuesday, there's not going to be a live meeting. So I'm around and I'm going to be available, but I wanted to allow myself a little bit of breathing room. So what I've done is I recorded the content that I would have presented in our meeting into shorter videos for you to watch. So you'll go ahead and watch these videos, and they're for this video, for one of these 2 videos, there is a Zoom credit writing assignment. So you want to make sure that you watch the videos, both to get the credit for the Zoom video, and also because, well, I will know if you don't watch them because you won't have read about thesis statements and introductions and conclusions and all that good stuff. You won't know about it. So it's to your benefit to watch it and it's required, so please do. And then kind of the same thing in week 8. Week 8, we'll have moved on to another writing assignment and I'm explaining the prompt here in the video. So I'm not abandoning you guys. I don't want you to think that. I'm going to be available via email. Those of you who do email me, you know that I get back to you within 24 hours at the most. So don't hesitate to reach out. I just didn't want to have live meetings on the calendar with a new baby. So jump back really quick here. That was pretty much it, I think. Okay, so I will go ahead and publish week 7 and week 8 for you when we get a little bit closer so you have access to them. But for now, I got this week 6 posted so you can, jump ahead a little bit if you want, or like I said, you've kind of got a lucky break here with everything moving back a week. Any questions before I do the last slide for the Zoom credit?
Yes, I didn't get my grade for the discussion question. They say I say check in.
That's because there is I think that thread requires a response to a peer. So when that's the case, let's say, yeah, so there's two parts to this one. One part was due yesterday, but the other part's not due to the 18th, and your response to a peer is not due until the 21st. So I can't grade it until the 21st when all these different deadlines have happened.
Okay, that's understandable. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a good point too. A lot of people are losing points for not responding to a peer. The thread always says if it's required. So make sure that you're, reading to see if it's required and then posting if it is, so that you don't lose easy points on that. Any other questions? Okay, then here is your Zoom credit assignment. A really simple one for you guys today. Just spend 5 minutes or so, or I said 10 minutes, so 5 to 10 minutes writing, free writing, right? I never grade these by grammar or, quality or anything. I just want you to share and spend some time writing after the meeting. So just tell me, how's your semester going? Are you worried about anything? Is COVID making life or school hard? Feel free to share concerns or, exciting news with me. Just, it's basically like a journal entry that you'd be comfortable sharing with me. And that's pretty much it. Just practice some writing without thinking and get some stuff on the paper. Make sure to turn that in by 4:30 today. And if you have no questions for me, feel free to exit the meeting. Otherwise, hang around and you can ask me anything you need.
Bye, Professor. Have a good one.
Bye, you too.
Have a good one, and congratulations, since we're not going to hear from you.
Thank you. Well, I'll be around on Thursday.
Okay.
But thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Amy.
I had a question.
Sure.
So for my paper, I wanted to interview someone, and I guess I don't know how to properly cite the interview, like how to give them credit, and then also I didn't know kind of how to pull their input into my paper, if that makes sense.
So are you wanting to do that for the summary response paper, or are you wanting to do that, you mean like for the actual end of semester paper?
Actual end of semester paper.
Okay. So first of all, it's totally a good type of resource to have is a one-on-one interview with someone. And what you would want to do are you planning on verbally interviewing them, or are you going to send them like a list of questions and have them like
I'm probably gonna verbally interview them because I know them personally. So
okay. Then the best thing to do is use your phone if you can to record the interview, so that if you want to do a direct quote, you can actually quote it and make sure that it's verbatim, word for word. So that's tip number one, is have that down, or have a recording device.
I got it.
You're going to want to make sure that you have the person's first and last name. Obviously, if you believe it or not, I've had students who didn't know the person's last name. It was just a student in another class or something, and they forgot to ask. So you want that last name because that works just like an author of an article. That's how you're going to put it in your works cited page, is listing them by their last name and then their first name.
Got it. Okay.
And then you want to have the date and time of the interview as well. And so the way that that's done, let me share my screen again. So it's not super common. So it's not one that I have memorized, but it's easy to find. MLA, let's say works cited for interview.
And would it be okay, technically this would be their testimony, I guess. So I didn't know if that would be allowed. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so really a personal interview is acceptable really under any circumstances, because obviously the reason that you're interviewing someone is because they have experienced what you're talking about, or they can add some type of expertise to the discussion. So if it's their testimony about something that they personally experienced, that's 100% fine. And it's going to, like in your works cited page, it'll look just like this. So last name, first name, personal interview, and then the date of the interview.
Okay, perfect. That helps. Okay. So then, well, I'm basically, so I don't know. I'm talking out loud as well. So basically, I would find information in my articles about my subject, and then I would be able to input their input on it or their testimony on it, and the paper be okay. I'm saying, like, I just didn't know what was allowed and what wasn't allowed.
Remind me what your topic is, Caitlin.
Father's rights.
Father's rights. Okay. So yeah, the way that would work is, let's say, somewhere in the body of your paper, you're writing about how unfair the existing laws are for fathers who want to have equal access or equal custody to their children. And maybe you quote, like, some type of article from a legal journal or something. And, so then you've talked about like that article for a little bit. And then in the next paragraph, you say, what this article failed to take into consideration is the reality many fathers actually face. Mr. James Jones is a single father, or has been a single father since 2014. His experience illustrates that. And then you might have a quote from that interview. So you would work with the interview, the content that you get from the interview, in the same exact way that you would work with an article from a journal. You don't treat it any differently. You explain who the person is who said it and why what they said is relevant to what you're talking about.
Okay, that helps. And also I had one more thing. When I was doing one of the assignments, I don't remember, and I was finding an article, I had noticed that I couldn't find an article. Well, I found an article that I wanted to use, but then I realized when I was trying to cite it that it didn't have an author or anybody that wrote it per se. Like, I looked up and down the whole web page and I just couldn't see who wrote it. It just stated the website and just the company, and that was really it. And I just didn't know how to correctly cite that.
Do you happen to have the name of the article?
I don't. I know it was attached to one of the assignments that I got like half credit on because of the reason of the way I did cite it. It wasn't correctly because I didn't know how to cite it. So, but I don't know what assignment that is. I would have to go back on to my grades and find it.
And that was in our class?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me see.
It was the one. Which side are you on? I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I was. Which side are you on?
Okay, let me get over there real quick. Oh, I'm in the wrong class. That's okay.
And I know for a fact that I cited it all incorrectly, and I just didn't know like the best way to go about it. If I did stumble on another article that didn't have like an author that wrote that article per se.
Yeah, nope, that's a good question. Let me. Okay. So do you know, okay, I see there's two. There's a legalmatch.com and then the family law rights. Do you know which one it was?
Family law rights.
Okay, so let me get into there and then let me share.
I'm also not a computer, so I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. All right, so the family law rights. So here we are.
I was taking information from that page, and then I scroll all the way to the bottom, and I was like, I don't see anybody that actually wrote it. I see copyrights and legal solution, like all that in the corner, but I was like, I really don't know what to cite from this or how to cite it correctly. So that's kind of why I put like family law rights and parentheses, because I was like, I don't know what to put because I didn't know who wrote it.
So the answer is a little bit complicated, but I'm gonna try to say it in the most direct way possible. So first and foremost, you'll run into a lot of teachers who would tell you that you cannot use this site because there's no author and because it's a business, right? So this family law rights, they're a for-profit business, which means that you have to take that into consideration, that everything that they're saying here is aimed at getting people to hire them to obtain their father's rights. So some teachers will tell you, absolutely not, you can't use it, it's not credible. So I want to make sure you know that, so that you don't move on from my class and then be like, that Tiffany McPherson doesn't know what she's talking about. I'm a little bit more of a liberal and forward thinking teacher. So I would say you absolutely can use this. It looks like it has a lot of good information, and it looks like it's fact-based. It doesn't, from my initial skim anyway, it doesn't seem like it's really biased or like it's trying to
One-sided.
yeah. So the way that you would be able to use this in the right context would be in your writing to acknowledge, like, this is not from a legal journal. It's not even necessarily written by a lawyer. It could have been written by a receptionist who works for this business, and they said, hey, throw something together for our homepage. So since you don't know, the way that you would present it, I'm going to just kind of type it out for you, would be according to family law rights. And we want to see, we want to look here down at the bottom, see, we don't necessarily have an address, but it says that we can get you started in the right direction by providing information from our affiliated attorneys. So according to family law rights, we could put a web-based group who helps fathers find experienced attorneys. Right? So that would be an appropriate way to use it. So if I'm the reader, I know that whatever this quote is, it's coming from a web-based group who helps fathers find attorneys. It's not coming from an attorney. It's not coming from a father. It's not coming from a judge or a legal journal. It's just basically some website. So then I, as the reader, I can determine how much weight I think that quote carries.
Okay, that helps.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit, it does.
And, the kind of information that you're going to get from a site like this, it's pretty much going to be informational and like fact-based. It's not going to be some point that you're disagreeing with or trying to build, a big argument around. So it's not, it's not really dangerous to use a source like this, just because, like I said, you're really just going to probably use it to provide a little bit of information that you can't provide because you're a student. Like you don't really have experience with family law, right? So you need some type of base to build up like the background information. So it's really all you're using it for anyway.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And those are all my questions.
Okay, good. I'm glad I could help. Let me know if you think of anything else.
Sure. Thank you and congrats again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, I have a question. This is Edra. I was so because you and I already spoke about what I had written before, and I was like, okay, so then it kind of got me stumped on because I was passionate about that. So then I thought about, okay, well, write about I guess food as far as like I don't eat pork. So I'm kind of passionate about that too. And I try to read everything that I cook as far as like the ingredients and stuff. And when I go to the grocery store and I read what's on the back of the labels on food products that I buy, whatever. And I try to make sure that I buy things that don't have pork in it. So I'm kind of struggling with, I guess, writing about that. I guess, but I don't know how to phrase it properly to make it to where it has opposing sides, views, and opposing views.
Sure, like a controversy, like so it's debatable.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that there's a lot to work with when it comes to the topic of diet. And, there's so much anymore, like there's so much discussion and debate about whether plant-based is the healthiest or whether, low carb is the healthiest. And like my sister doesn't eat pork either. And I don't remember. I know it has something to do with like pigs being scavengers, like, and she just thinks what they eat is gross, so she wouldn't eat them. So I'm kind of familiar, with the general topic. So I think if you phrase like your research question, it's something like this. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So your research question could be something like, let's see, should Americans move toward a healthier way of life by eliminating? Now, I would say if you can't be so narrow as to say just by eliminating pork, like you're not going to get 7 pages out of that. But if you add to it, so should Americans move toward a healthier way of life?
Scavenger foods or scavenger animals?
Is that a big, let's see. Let me see what we can
We
find.
have a lot of animals that are scheduled. I eat I'll eat shrimp, whatever. I'm Muslim and we don't eat pork. And so you have the religious aspect on why not eat pork. And then, you go into, I guess, the health elements on, why pork is not good for you and this and the other.
Okay, so kind of like this, right? Why pigs, crabs, and lobsters are bad.
And I like me some crabs. I just made some last night, but I don't touch, pork. I'll be like, that's the only one that I just will not like. I won't touch it. But yeah, it's yeah. But they have it in a whole lot of things, and people don't know because they break it down to the scientific name of it, and they'll take certain particles out of the pig and put it in gelatin and stuff, or some candies and even breads and stuff.
Right. Yeah, I do. So like I said, I do think you can work with a topic that starts out like this,
okay.
But I think I don't think that you can just say, I don't even think you can say by eliminating scavengers. Okay. Only because here's what I fear would happen for you. When I do that initial search of don't eat scavenger animals, I'm not getting good sources. I'm getting information about what a scavenger is, why vultures don't get sick. And then I'm getting bad sources like Quora on, So I think that you can, so keeping in mind that what you want to write about, you definitely want to include no pork, right? And maybe even no other scavengers. And then, maybe you want to get into, I'm not sure where your interests lie, but maybe you want to talk a little bit about plant-based or vegan, or the ethical meat type of discussion, right?
So I guess should Americans move toward a healthier way of cooking? Could it be cooking? Because I make everything from scratch, literally. Most of my seasonings I make from scratch too. So for processed food. Because the processed foods has so many, bad elements to it. It's high in salt, and you don't know what chemicals is put all up in it and stuff. And even when it comes to hot dogs, that's just everything left over, grind it all up with a little this and a little that.
Yeah, I do think that that's a good entry point by asking these questions. Should Americans move toward a healthier way of life by avoiding processed foods? Because some people, so this is why it's debatable, because some people are going to say yes, absolutely. People need to be more educated about what they're putting in their mouths and understand that, list of ingredients and everything. And other people are going to say, no, why? Why would we? People, there's very seemingly healthy people out there who eat processed foods and they are running marathons and doing just fine. So yeah, I think it's debatable, and it also allows you to kind of go down a couple of different paths to talk about things that you're really interested in.
Because I can put on the pork thing underneath of that, because even some people don't realize, you have some vegetarians that they don't realize they'll eat processed food and don't realize, okay, well, you may be eating processed food, but your stuff, just because it has a K on it, does not mean that it's, some people, especially with Muslims, they'll buy kosher foods, not understanding that the meaning of kosher just means the process in which it was made or whatever. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have any animals in it or any pork in it. It just means that the plant that this, say this hot dog or this chip was made in, the process when this shipment was made the machines were cleaned, and that was it. It doesn't
Right.
mean that the additives in it is not, from something clean. It just means that the plant that it was in was cleaned every time this package or whatever was made or whatever.
Right.
That's that.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's definitely a discussion that you can integrate into a paper like this. That's really important, and it's going to obviously allow you to make a really strong argument for where you want to go with the paper.
Okay. Okay.
That
Thank
helpful?
you. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm writing the Zoom stuff, and you'll read it in a Zoom thing, but I'm a disabled.
Okay, I'm jumping back in at the very end of this meeting because the beginning of the meeting did not get recorded, and I wanted to make sure that the explanation about how to do the annotating assignment is included in this meeting. So very quickly, I will do a share screen and jump back into the PowerPoint, where I have some examples of how the annotating assignment should have been completed. So the idea is that you were finding an article about your topic, and if you find that article online and you have access to Microsoft Word or to Google Docs, you can copy all the text from the article and place that into your document, as we see here on the left. And then as you're reading the article, you'll use the comment feature again in Microsoft Word or in Google Docs to record your thoughts, ideas, and opinions. So that's the difference between annotating and taking notes. Taking notes would be recording facts and important ideas that you think you need to remember. That's not what we're doing. Annotating is recording your opinions and your emotional response as you're reading, as well as your questions and really anything that comes to mind. It's just a record of what you thought and you felt as you read. So you make these comments literally as you're reading the article for the first time. And then when you submit, I'll be able to see your comments as well as the text that you are responding to. If you are a person who prefers to work with print materials, so let's say you find your article and then you use an actual printer and print out the piece of paper and you want to write your annotations, you can submit photo files or JPEG files, and it would look something like this. So you can tell that this student went ahead and printed out the article, used a highlighter as well as a pen to go ahead and read the article and then leave a record of their annotations for me to review. So that in a nutshell is how to complete the annotating assignment that was due yesterday. As I explained earlier in the meeting, if you didn't do it right, that's not a big deal. That always happens because it's kind of a different assignment than what people are used to. You can go ahead and resubmit that assignment to me via email as soon as you possibly can, either by tonight before midnight, if I've already given you that deadline, or if you have not reached out yet, reach out, let me know that you want to redo the assignment, and we'll figure out when it needs to be submitted by.